This is Antithesis, your underground academic radio where the focus is on you. For those that are in the thick of it today, we know what you are living through. And for those that chose or were forced onto a different path, we know what it costs. We're here to be your companion and to help you reorient your compass a bit, to help make sense of it all. Thanks for being here. The opinions expressed here are my own and do not reflect those of my employer or any entity professionally affiliated with me. Topics in these podcasts will be familiar to many, if not all, within the academic and scientific communities, within institutions, industries, and employers of all kinds. Some of these topics may be of a highly sensitive nature to certain listeners, particularly those that have experienced or are experiencing them, and could trigger some emotions that are upsetting or distressing. I've created this space to speak openly about these topics with the broader goal of helping individuals cope, adjust, and adapt constructively to the many challenges at hand. With that said, thank you for joining me. Antithesis, Episode 20, Forward. Hello everyone, thank you for joining us today for our 20th and final episode of this Season 1 of the podcast Antithesis. I want to kick off today by imploring to those of you tuning in what it means to carry the power of one. And I want to do so beginning with a quote that I happened to glean recently from one of my personal social media accounts, of which I had abandoned to a large degree in the fall of 2020. I've alluded to these feelings throughout the season for the reason why I did so, and I'll state ever so briefly here. While conveying, promoting, advertising, a visage of limitless connections and a quote, freedom of open communication, end quote, the underlying control mechanisms that influence from within how social media operates, as well as bad actors, foreign and otherwise, made me realize I could no longer take part to any substantial extent. It's tough because I have connections with many family and friends, and even the ability to share this podcast becomes ultimately constrained. Nevertheless, I just don't engage like I did in the past. And while it is unfortunate, it merely became a matter of self-preservation and minimizing the financial benefit of the social media conglomerates involved. And similarly, while I am always game for discussion and actual discourse between truly willing, open, and thoughtful parties, in instance of debate, a two-way street social media does not make. I'd already decided on the thrust for this final episode, and in the off chance when I happened to see a post from an old school and classmate of mine, Sean, it is the very final sentence of his post that I feel is imperative to share. And here it is, quote, "When will the majority of America wake up and realize it doesn't matter which party you back, we, the common folk, will always be on the losing side of the game," unquote. I wanted to share Sean's sentiment because I think his feeling is widespread, and I believe more widespread than he could possibly imagine. In fact, I'd be interested to know the percent of Americans within each and every single socioeconomic class outside of multimillionaires and billionaires that would also feel they are common folk. Of course, this is about where the context and definition of common comes into play. But what if it isn't about wealth? Are we talking education? Are we talking experience? Are we talking location of residence? What is it that would make someone common? Or more importantly, what is it that would make someone feel that they are common? And not to ascribe some kind of negative connotation to the word common, but this usage does not resonate as something overly positive. Thinking a bit more on it, if someone that might be deemed from the outside as uncommon, and yet they themselves made efforts directed towards the greater good of an entire group, or community, a state, or an entire region, might they be given an exception, a pass in their status, and maybe accepted by adoption as one of us, even if not fitting the mold as what one might call common? For those of you that have been tuning into this series, and as we close the book on these first 20, I want to share a personal anecdote, and I'm wondering if Sean will remember. And I think it is an immensely simple but powerful example for much, if not all of what we've talked about here concerning education, academia, research, institutions, the people that operate these institutions, but also everyone and everything else. You see, the hierarchy exists no matter where you are. I think it comes down to the simple matter of two choices. Either you want to build or you don't. And the latter can include doing absolutely nothing to or with the growth that is happening in the world around you, or simply wanting to tear things down. And I believe you can be from the tiniest village or tribe on this planet and that you will have something to give. And it is in that contribution I think we are way more common folk than what many would presume. I was a freshman on our football team. Sean was a sophomore, and we were at a practice at some point early in the season. Of course, for a majority of us freshmen, it was trial by fire to even simply avoid getting pummeled by the upperclassmen during practice. What was interesting about this particular day is that I recall that Sean was in plain clothes, maybe due to an injury. I can't remember. But I'm recounting this because one specific event on this day remains clear as a bell to me, and for better or worse, like a billion other memories I have maintained, but this one will stick with me. Since I was young, I've had a lifelong chronic health issue that I've had to contend with, and this meant I needed to pay close attention to my glucose levels and how I felt physically during intense sporting activities. The bigger concern was always getting too low of glucose or hypoglycemic. So it became ubiquitous for me to have a bottle of soda on the sidelines by my side. It was at some point during practice that an upperclassman, a senior, approached me and asked for a sip of it. And to this day, I remember that it was a bottle of mug root beer. It is astounding that this product still exists. I found this particularly odd because I have no idea what drew this guy's attention to me, or honestly his motive, if he had one, except for the fact that even having a soda with me made me stand out to everyone else. But at that point, out of a matter of respect, I handed it to him. I cannot recall precisely what happened, if he had turned away from me or if I'd been distracted otherwise, but not too much later, Sean approached me and laughing, looked at me and said plainly, "You know he spit into your bottle, right?" It was just another example of hazing, and for much of that first year and into the second, some directed attacks continued to take place from others, what I'm betting most of you could recall in one form or another per your own high school experiences, unfortunately. But I have to say, even though it was hard to process the context of Sean's message to me, if he actually found it funny or not, I was appreciative to at least know where the line was being drawn with some folks. And what ended up happening to my assailant by their own doing a few weeks after that incident and within the next decade plus was indeed tabloid-worthy material. As the next couple of years passed, Sean and I were playing on the same team, and I have memories of it becoming clear what separated the wheat from the chaff. In the end, I was pretty proud of what my classmates and graduating class represented relative to where we had started at the beginning of our high school journey. It did feel as if, over that short span of time, that values had changed, maybe just some hints of broader maturity in general. And I think it became clearer who and when people would go to bat for each other and not at each other. Sean, how's that back feeling? Inside story, folks. As we circle back to the idea of common folk, and much of what I have been hoping to share with you over the past several months, to no less than deliberate, there are two hierarchies that exist: the hierarchy of the world around us and the hierarchy of the world inside us. Putting it in that way, I want anyone listening to ask themselves the question, which of these is truly the biggest threat to us and our existence? During my time in academia and beyond, I've traveled the United States and some parts of the world, and I have seen firsthand where people's feet touch the ground, along with all the different types and styles of shoes being worn where they live. And no matter how hard I try, I will fall short of describing the number of people that I met that carried immense pride in who they are and what they do. And this was in all walks of life. And I experienced many interactions that underscored a simple principle: so long as the bigger picture was understood and both the benefits and the detriments to a plan or an action were shown to yield some kind of progress that came out to a net positive for today or tomorrow, no matter how small, that this meant something. And the importance for people to be heard and to have a real sense of inclusion of what they mean to the big picture was key. And when people were able to realize and feel that they were a part of the effort, especially on the community or even the regional level, this defined a purpose. And it didn't matter who these people were, where they lived, what their jobs were, what their life choices and roles were. This purpose clearly lifted them past any interpretable feeling that they were common. It was having a common goal that was a perspective changer. And this was and is immensely powerful to coalesce very different people from potentially very different backgrounds into a unified vision. Should it only be severe threats to human existence, including war, that helps band people together, no matter how different? And this is where we return to the question of what is more dangerous? Where you sit first and foremost in your own internal hierarchy of how an external hierarchy impacts you. Well, the fact is, if you don't have a modicum of self-respect and are unable to elevate yourself to any degree, you are already your own worst enemy. Even worse is when self-suppression kicks in, particularly when spurred on by outside influences. Hatred is not spontaneous, it is taught. And while we all will feel different about ourselves, starting at our earliest of beginnings, it is those outside influences that will have the biggest impact, and the adverse impacts can be immensely destructive. It is the worst outcomes that are instilled by those we look up to, those that have the greatest influence on us, some by nature of who they are and our relationship with them, others because it is forced upon us and or we allow it to happen merely because of circumstance. And without question, I've met and known a few people that would be and were happy to spit in the very soda I offered them. And honestly, today, this metaphor applies better than I could have possibly imagined to everything, to all of us. The real question there is, how do we react to it then? And how do we react to it now in moving forward? I mentioned at the top of this episode, the power of one. Throughout this series, I've aimed to speak directly to academics, past and present, from those starting out the pursuit of their journeys to those that are farther along, and others that might have been out of the realm for many years. To discuss some perspectives and philosophies, I'm betting many of them shared, maybe even some of them unique, and to paint the walls with some different colors around the mirror that is hanging right in front of you, honestly, so we can see ourselves and what we do differently. Differently than what those in control might judge. Differently than those from the outside might think, differently from the parts of us that have been so beaten down that we end up at times becoming our own worst nightmares. Whatever the success, whatever the duress, for the former, for whomever you are helping, for the latter, whomever or whatever is causing it. While it can seem pervasive for some folks to project a feeling of being real special, the struggle is real and deep and comes part and parcel with the title from our episode 1. Check it out. But for others listening that were never embedded in that academic structure, you see, these themes are no way different. And this is such a powerful but destructive factor in general to reduce your own importance, your own value, and your own locality in your world. That is the first step backward. And it comes with all the symptoms of feeling lost, failure, regret. And what else am I missing? Non-academic folks, plumbers, electricians, farmers, nurses, bankers, park rangers, full-time parents, everyone under the sun. Every one of you has something to give. And we need the power of one to make those impacts, to cause those ripples, and for everyone else around you to hear and see the example of what they need to contribute. And I'll state this clearly and bluntly. Just like scientists can't choose the outcome of their research that they want, because the factors and conditions of every experiment they can do can be numerous, and even the smallest thing could be a big contributor to a process. But this means they need to fight over and over to try to uncover the fundamental understanding to how something works. And this means getting kicked in the teeth over and over again, either by data, the results, sometimes other people. This in no way is ever a vacation. And while there can be some moments of excitement, the grind can be as unbearable as any. And the only way you're guaranteed to be on the losing side of the game is if you quit and close yourself off and refuse to have the ability to even imagine what it's like to wear someone else's pair of shoes. Because I'll say this without hesitation, the shoes that who might be deemed the uncommon folks are wearing might look awfully fancy, but their feet hurt as much as anyone else's. And I'll reiterate another overarching theme to this series that I hope has been transmitted clearly. Our failures in every realm all have a common thread of the inability and sometimes even the straight unwillingness to communicate, to bond, to drive, to understand, to achieve together the goals that should be common to every one of us. As citizens of the world, as human beings, we have neither time nor place for false modesty or caustic pride. And none of us have the option to sit on the bench simply feeling as if they are left out. For every single person that relinquishes their power of one, irreparable harm is done to the path that lies ahead. I think the question of our time is this: is it now impossible for us to use reason and be reasonable? It takes no less than this for us to move forward. Remember who you serve and remember who serves you, whether seen or unseen. And even for folks for which you have disdain, that you know are part of a contingent doing that service for you, remember all the others that are there working in good faith, just like you, right? For students and researchers starting on their path, I hope these first 20 episodes provided some helpful deliberations and some methods and practices to build your resilience for what lies ahead, which is at the moment an even rockier road, and ways to define your value for yourself and something even bigger, not just the check boxes to approval for a paper, qualifications for a degree, or landing a job, but to know that each and every effort that you make to learn, discover, and teach goes beyond just the local environment. It is global through the people that you impact and those you inspire, even through the smallest of actions as those ripples flow forward. For those of you that are soon aiming to land a new faculty job and those that are already there toiling away, I hope we have done the same, and even to provide a bit of kinship for what you are experiencing. I know you are. The successes, the challenges. For others that have joined for the first part of this journey, it means a lot that you tuned in and spent some time hearing about perspectives of the academic world firsthand from the ground with complete candor. I have said more than once here that academia and higher education should work harder to express and achieve a common ground with everyone. It's so much more than curing cancer, and the strains and pains with relationships and hierarchy and leadership and priorities on the inside of the not-so-ivory tower are little different, if at all, than what goes on in the rest of the world. I'm hoping it was informative, interesting, and maybe even entertaining at times, and that it provided a unique looking glass into how science is done, where improvements in training and practice are needed, and what it truly means to be academic.
that the concept of what is and what we should achieve should not be that different from anyone's mind. Academic. You don't have to be at a university or a college or doing research anywhere in higher education to still be academic in how you think, in how you behave, in how you work with each other. As we wrap up this season 1, I do so with hopes of us all having the resolve and strength to continue moving forward to our next steps with a clear vision of commitment and growing passion to what we can learn from each other and achieve with each other. We've interwoven quite a bit more about current events and happenings than I had imagined I would, because these times certainly call for it. In more ways than one, we are more similar and have so much more in common than people think, or at times are led to believe. The sooner we can all acknowledge and even be willing to acknowledge that we are all common folk with needs and desires that align, the better. And mind you, this isn't a problem for the past few months or years. It has been a problem for decades. To me, the phrase servant leadership comes to mind, and the part that every human being and citizen needs to resolve and to play. I will state again as clearly and plainly as possible here. Every one of us needs this adjustment toward the definition of service. Everyone is culpable, everyone is responsible. And sometimes this can be as simple as readjusting your thinking of what serves myself, my family, my neighbors, my community the best. And it is that note that I also believe is a common thread throughout the first season of Antithesis. It is now at this stage where I want to shift some time and effort to writing the detailed story of my path and my experience in the academic world, of which some parts I shared a few details in various episodes. Committing to paper the deeper experiences and interactions of my time in the academic realm is an important part of me continuing my journey forward. And born from that will come our season 2. May you all continue to have the greatest, most positive impact you can in the world within and beyond you. Don't give up on the power of one. Don't underestimate the power of one or the influence you have through the mindset you state, the example you set. We all need it to move forward. And with that, thanks so much for joining me today, and please keep your eyes out for when we'll be back with season 2. No matter on which platform you heard today's or past episodes, if you enjoyed them and want to hear more down the road, please subscribe, follow, like, and share, and I will look forward to the opportunity to sharing more experiences and thoughts, but most importantly to me, providing you with support that resonates with what you have done thus far and are aiming to achieve in whatever realm you live and work. All of you, keep building up your courage, hang in there, and keep your head up. Thanks again truly for tuning in to this season 1 of Antithesis. Continuing 30 years of experience with stories in and beyond the academic realm, Antithesis is a podcast that will take these perspectives and philosophies and pull them, along with you, the student, the researcher, the innovator, the educator, into the sunlight. Join us for some firsthand experiences, insights from inside and outside academia, and perspectives that are aimed at redefining the conventions of academia and your training, with the aim of helping you reorient your compass and strengthen you on your journey forward, or to recover and grow from those times past. We'd love to have you follow us and tune in weekly. If you have a topic you'd like discussed or a challenge you are facing you want to share, email us at allsystemsgo@gmail.com. That is ALLSYST3MSGO@gmail.com.